Hello, 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 and welcome to Side Hustle Ideas. I am Bill, the company's expert, and greetings to you on this fine Monday morning. It is a holiday where I am right now in Canada, and everybody else is fast asleep. Everyone else is keeping off the streets because I looked outside this morning and I saw the sun. It was bright red. I'm in Canada, and there are some wildfires going in Canada, and we're finally, where I am, starting to see some of the smoke and dust from those. So the air quality isn't great. But that's okay, because we're here anyway, and we're here to talk side hustles. This is Side Hustle Ideas, where we talk about everything related to entrepreneurship, starting a business, small business, how to run a business, how to learn about business, and the name of the live stream itself, Side Hustle Ideas, how to do side hustles, and some ideas for how you could do and what to do. And I see that I have a new member on my channel, Gina Shin. Welcome to Gina Shin. Thank you for being a member. Thank you for your show of support. I want to thank all my members. I want to thank all my Patreons, anyone else who has said something very complimentary, and all the people that have said really, really nice things, flattering things in the comments. Thank you so much. You guys are awesome. The title of this is Marketing. And is it market? It's marketing and I don't have it in front of me. Marketing and operations. Everything else is, what was it? Everything else is just support. Yes, so we're going to be talking about that. That's going to be the theme, more of a business theme. But we're going to start this off with the usual thing, or the thing that I vowed to do last time, which is the introduction, which is basically saying that I think business is magical. I think it's a great vehicle to do many things and accomplish many goals in your life. For example, if you learn a little bit of basic entrepreneurship, it can manifest itself as a side hustle where you do a little bit of extra work on the side and it brings in money for you every month to supplement your day job. And who doesn't want that? In addition, it teaches you a ton of things. It allows you to be more independent. You're not as dependent on an employer quite as much. You have a little bit more, shall we say, job security, or at least financial security, in the sense that you have revenue streams, you have income coming in, regardless of what may be going on with your day job or the economy or your industry. If it's in a boom bust industry and sometimes it's uncertain, who wouldn't want another income stream coming in on the side? So on the small end, you get that, which is great. Whichever way you slice it, that's great. However, it can also lead to really, really cool things like being a full-blown entrepreneur and having your own business. Having your own small business, or even you might even grow it to be beyond a small business, in which case you are completely financially independent. And not only that, it's not all about money. It's also about independence, and it's about creativity, doing exactly what you want for your job. A lot of people, especially when you're working at the bottom, big complaint is that you don't do your work on your own terms. And even if you enjoy the work that you do, maybe you've got insufferable coworkers or a toxic boss and a toxic work environment, and you don't mind doing the work, but you could do without all the rest of that stuff. So this allows you to be able to break free from that. And if that weren't enough, if you're on the bottom at the lower level, entry level, sort of lower level jobs, worker level, this can break through the ceiling, the cap on your income. Okay, if you're successful at what you do, you can make a lot more money than you would in a regular career. That is an option. So for all those reasons, I think it's awesome, and that's what we're here to talk about. So this is primarily a Q&A. So you should see the chat box right next to my face, or if you're on a mobile phone, as I would say, but mobile phone to Americans, and it should be below my face. Get in the chat, and if you have any questions about business, side hustles, entrepreneurship, any of that stuff, just let it fly in the chat, and I will see it, and I will do my best to help you out if I can speak to anything. So yeah, now you have the better of me because I don't have a plan beyond the title of this. So let's talk about marketing and operations. Something that I have, the way I've thought about business for a very, very long time is that the two most important areas of business in any business operation are operations and marketing. Operations is you make a product or a service. It's the thing that you're selling. That's what operations is in charge of, creating that thing. And then marketing is getting people to pay for it, essentially. And by far, those get the attention of the people in charge, usually the owner. But if it's a larger organization, maybe the owner's not in charge. Maybe they've appointed their deputy to run the whole thing. That's what I was as a CEO. You are the person in charge of somebody else's business operation. Okay. Otherwise, you would be the owner. Okay, or owner operator or whatever size you are. So the two things you're going to be paying the most attention to generally across the board are marketing and operations. Everything else is minor. They just facilitate marketing and operations. So HR, finance, all the other areas. It depends what business you're in, but you're going to have many, many other things. You could have a legal operation, like a legal department. You could have safety. You could have environmental. You can have all kinds of different things in there, but they're basically support. Yes, we have people in the chat, and the person who gets the recognition for being the first person in the chat is Manhunt 800. Awesome. That's a pretty foreboding name. Manhunt 800 says, what are the prime responsibilities of a marketing director? Well, it does vary. Okay. It depends on the industry, but generally speaking, hopefully everybody understands marketing is usually in practice separated from sales. Not all the time. Sometimes businesses will combine them. And obviously on the small scale, they will combine them. But if you're talking about something larger, usually they separate marketing and sales. So the sales department is in charge of selling. They'll have salespeople, either inside salespeople or outside salespeople. And you have sales managers and the director of sales. And essentially what they do is essentially ratio analysis. They look at let's look at our sales per salesperson. Let's look at our sales per product. Let's look at our sales per geographic region. Let's look at our sales per city, and then do a ratio of the amount of promotion we put in versus the amount of sales we've generated by volume or by numbers, that kind of thing. So that's all sales. Marketing is separate from that because what they do is marketing basically answers three questions, right? What's our message? Who's it for? And how do we convey it? How do we communicate it? Those are the three questions that marketing answers. So generally in the marketing department, you're going to get the people that they do the sort of like the graphic design department that does promotional materials. Depending on what business you're in, you can have different operations like publicity, promotion, advertising, things like that. You could have direct sales. You could have a whole bunch of things within the marketing department. And marketing department, the high level stuff is that they're going to be figuring out how to promote the product. Sales is more like, the sort of day-to-day business of actually going out and putting that into practice. But marketing is sort of the coming up with the plan and the execution of how you're going to do it. Okay. So the director of marketing, which was your question, what are you in charge of? Basically, at the end of the day, you're in charge of, indirectly, you're in charge of sales, but directly you're in charge of the success of the business in terms of making sales. Okay. Because ultimately that's your goal. Okay. You have to come up with the strategy, how you're going to sell it, to whom you're going to sell it, and how you're going to convince people to buy. That's basically what your job is. So depending on the industry, then you will have different departments under you, and you're going to be coordinating those different departments, allocating resources among them, and determining the strategic direction or the operational direction, depending on what level you're at. That's the director of marketing. So extremely important that you have the right person in that role, because if they don't really understand the nature of the business, they don't really understand the customers or clients that they're going to and how the customers and clients think. And if they don't know how to obtain that information in a changing world, it's going to be bad. To put it bluntly. So this person is constantly thinking about that, and in practice, the director of marketing, a big part of what they do personally is furthering the cause by essentially being how can I put it? Not a political figure, but perception is a big thing for them. So they're going to be representing the organization a lot. Okay, so if ever you have presence at important industry events and things like this, a lot of times, depending on your size, the director of marketing will probably be somebody that's going to have a presence there. Okay, more so than other sort of high-level executives. So hopefully that makes sense. Manhunt 800 also goes on to say, don't you think revenue generation is the key department, such as sales department? Well, it depends. I mean, like, are you talking within the context of the director of marketing? Revenue generation is the key department. Well, really, what your focus is for the person who's running the operation is not revenue; it's profit. Okay, so there's no use in making a ton of revenue if your costs are spiraling out of control. It does you absolutely no good. So it's going to be revenue per cost, right? So, I mean, that's the primary focus, right? And I've seen different businesses do it different ways. Sometimes they allow the marketing department to be a pure revenue center. Like, it's not a cost center at all. They don't look at that whatsoever. That's maybe on the operations side. Operations will be the cost center, and marketing / sales will be the revenue center. And the two sort of don't mix until they get above that level to usually the CEO or the owner. Okay, I have seen that. I don't know if that really works that well. However, what's a little bit more common is that the director of marketing and stuff, they're also treating marketing as a cost center, and they're looking at the business in general more holistically as they're including the cost side of things too. And that's, in my opinion, really the way you want to look at these things. Operations has to do the same too. They need to look at the revenue side and not just costs all the time when you get to that highest level, like when you're talking about director of operations or the COO or something. My name is Manav. Okay, hey Manav. Creating brand. I see. So don't you think revenue generation is the key department, such as sales department, and creating brand awareness for the sales department in general? Well, I mean, the thing is, you can't look at it in isolation. Sales department is short term, okay? But marketing is long term, okay? If you screwed up your marketing, you're essentially trying to sell a refrigerator to an Inuit. You know what I'm saying? Like someone that doesn't need it. I mean, it doesn't matter how effective your salespeople are if you've got a product that's just pointless and the people you're trying to promote it to don't want it, right? You know what I'm saying? Like, you have to start with the marketing side. You have to have created a product that is tailored to meet the needs of a market, a group of customers. And then, once you've figured out what the message will be and what needs it satisfies and what wants it satisfies and all that kind of stuff, you've gotten solid answers to, what are your points of difference between you and your competitors and like all that stuff. Then you give all that stuff as like sort of the weapons that the sales department then uses to go out and put the whole plan into motion and generate sales, right? Like, for example, I hate using, famous general examples, but just to illustrate a point, think of a company like Toyota, okay? Now, I don't know. I'm not in the automotive industry, at least not anymore. I kind of was affiliated with it many, many years ago when I worked in locomotives. But in the automotive industry, as far as I know, Toyota has a very good product, okay? So if you were a salesperson for one of their competitors, maybe, like, I don't know, Chrysler, Jeep, something like that, I imagine you'd have to maybe work a little bit harder than a Toyota salesperson. Toyota has a very good perception, a very good reputation. So, the sales department doesn't have to work as hard. They become more like order takers and things like this rather than people that go out and evangelize the product. So, I mean, it really depends on the nature of the business you're in. But the ultimate goal is, yes, to make sales. You have to make sales, and you have to make them efficiently, And in a lot of organizations, you'll have a director of marketing where they're responsible for marketing and sales. Other times, you'll have a totally separate sales organization, director of sales running it, and they're at the same level as director of marketing. So, it depends how it's structured. But they all have the same goal. It doesn't really matter how you arrange it. They all have the same goal, right? Marketing is to provide the sort of weapons that sales will go out and use. And if marketing can't give them anything really compelling, same with operations. If operations can't give them anything really compelling, it doesn't really matter too much how effective your sales organization is if they don't have anything really good to promote. We have, how do you say this? Vabhav? Shindy says, I have 2+ years of employment gap looking for go in operations. Want to know the type of operations and career path for operations. Well, operations can mean literally anything. Like it depends what industry you're in. So, the career path for operations can go many, many different ways. Now, I came up through operations, but I jumped industries a couple times. So, if you can give me a little bit more specifics there, Vabhav, I can maybe give you something a bit more meaningful instead of just a general response that you probably already know. So let me know. Manhunt says, yes, profit is the key focus. Yes. Yeah, exactly. And that's two things, obviously. I'm sure everybody knows that. Profit is, you've got to look at your cost side, you've got to look at your revenue side. You can't just look at one. You can't be focused on just one. They both have to work together, right? And a lot of problems that we have, certainly in the short to medium term with a lot of businesses, is because decision makers within the organization are only looking at one of those two things. They're making decisions about, say, the product. Okay, maybe the roadmap for iterations of their product, or how they're maybe possibly retooling or changing their operation to produce the product, okay, or the installations involved. They're making those decisions without any sort of consideration of what's going on the revenue side. And that's when you get to a lot of problems. And that's actually a lot more common than a lot of people realize, because the people that are making these decisions, they're primarily concerned about their particular role and what's going to make their life easier and what's going to make them look better, right? This is what drives people. It's very unfortunate, especially in large organizations. These kind of principles just sort of run away with themselves a lot of time. And, they're talking about, like I've seen where people are talking about building new facilities and, sort of completely updating their manufacturing operations with, new equipment and new people, and, not any consideration, not a passing thought to what's going on the revenue side. How will this affect our revenue side? And then someone comes in, maybe the director of marketing, after these plans have sort of been made internally, hears about them for the first time and says something like, well, what this means is that you're going to leave our old, obsolete product as our flagship in production for another 2 years before you're going to be able to come out with something more updated. And we're going to have major problems selling that. We've already had to reduce prices and, employ all kinds of sort of desperate tactics to be able to sell this stuff now. I mean, what are our sales going to be like next year when you can't give us anything new because you're retooling everything? Things like this. So what you're missing is that we won't be able to pay for any of that without taking out more debt. So, a lot of business operations are affected by that kind of stuff. Just thinking only about like your little piece of the operation and not the whole. Okay, now going back to Vabhav says, working in a multinational corporation as processing claims and was team lead. Okay, I still don't know what industry you're in. Claims, like, are you talking insurance claims or warranty claims or that sounds like it's more of an administrative kind of role within operations as opposed to a technical role. I could be incorrect here, but that's what it sounds like. Now, I mean, operations can be anything from administration to engineering to science, right? To, factory unskilled labor. It depends where you are. So your career path, I see insurance. Okay. So you're in the insurance business. So that's more of an administrative kind of thing. Now, what your question was, you're wanting to know about career paths for operations. Now, I'm not in the insurance business myself, but if you are a claims clerk for insurance, I would suspect that it's somewhere along the line. If you want to rise up in something like insurance, which is very closely related to banking, learning finance, for example, would be important. I'm not sure if you have a background in finance, because all of these things are based off essentially finance. They're taking concepts in the world of finance and they're making transactions to support that, right? Insurance and lotteries and investment and banking are all extremely similar because you're just moving money around based on risk and return, right? Now, within the insurance industry, I know there's all kinds of qualifications you get to do like different jobs. I'm not sure what the overarching sort of education is to specifically go into insurance, but here's what you do, okay? Like, this is a blanket thing that you can do to get these kinds of answers, okay? And can I do this? Can I actually? No, I can't, because I've got an incognito window open. Here's what you do. If you're on LinkedIn, okay, you can get direct answers to this. Now, the idea is that, let's say you have the ambition of being in a certain position. Maybe this role is like 2 levels above you now, or 3 levels, something like that. Like one day, you want to go towards that, okay? You want to work in that role one day, okay? One thing you can do now is you can go on LinkedIn, and let's say you know the name of the role, okay? So say it's, I don't know, Director of Operations for an insurance company, a mid-sized insurance company, something like that. Let's pretend that was your ambition, okay? So you can go to LinkedIn and you can do a people search for in your geographic region, say your city or your region, wherever you live, and you can search within your industry, say insurance. You sort of put these as filters in the search, and you do a people search, and you search for people that currently have that job title, okay? So Director of Operations, Insurance, and then you confine it to your city. And what will happen is several individuals will appear as the results of this people search. And what you can do is you can go and look at their profiles, and your profile essentially gives like your resume, your education, and your experience. So you can see what these people have. So if your ambition is to be in that role, and you look at, like, I don't know, 20, 30 people that are in that role, okay? And you notice that they all have this educational qualification, or they all have this type of experience. Say they all have 10 years working, like in what you're doing now, processing claims, or some other lower level position. They've all put their time in that role, okay? So that tells you something. That tells you that, like, well, if I want to be in that position, it seems to be practically a requirement that I get that, right? On the other hand, if you see that, 29 out of 30 people in that role don't have, any kind of finance training, for example, they don't have an MBA, or they don't have a master's degree in anything, that's telling you that it doesn't seem to really be required to have that to be in that role. So that's how you can get much more specific questions answered. Okay. Now, what it's not going to tell you, it's not going to tell you things that don't appear on your resume. For example, personality traits, networking connections, things like that. It's not going to tell you that stuff, obviously, but you could even get that information by going a step further and doing informational interviews with some of these people, reaching out to them and say, like, hey, I'd love to be able to ask you a few questions about the insurance industry, and get your expert opinion. Would you be able to give me half an hour of your time? Sometime just name me a date, time, place of your convenience, and I'll be there. And you can sit down with them. You could ask them, tell me like, how did you move into this role? And, what does someone in that position do? Things like that. Okay. So I mean, I could go on, but that's kind of how you get specific answers, right from the horse's mouth, from the people that are in those roles. If you want to be in that role, they would be able to really give you some insight in maybe what you need and how to go about doing it. Or at the very least, they can tell you what they did. And then you could take that for what it's worth. Where are we here? Wow, you guys have some names that I have some difficulty pronouncing here. Hefty? Haji? I apologize. I always say everybody's name wrong, so just get used to it. Why I should prepare for account manager interview? Thank you. I don't know. I don't know what business you're at. I don't know what level you're at. This is about side hustles. This is about entrepreneurship. It's not about job interview. I will be doing a live stream later today on, hiring and job interviews and that stuff. So stick around for that if you're interested. Mickey Roden says, I work in tech support. Tech support, sales, and eventually marketing for large tech companies. Industry knowledge and sales experience will allow you to add more value in a marketing role. Yeah. Also knowledge of marketing will help you too. And the thing is, it depends what type of industry. If you're in a mature industry, okay, if you're going for a lot of roles, including like marketing type roles, education is less important and experience is more important. Okay, if it's a mature industry. If, however, you're not in a mature industry, you're in a relatively new business, a new industry, it's changing really quickly. Okay, the way they did business 20 years ago is not the way they do business today, and it's not gonna be the way they do business in 20 years. If that's the type of business you're in, education is much more important. Okay, much more important than experience. Because experience teaches you, like basically you shadow somebody, you see what they do, and then you do the same. It doesn't take a lot of talent a lot of time to just learn from experience. I'm not trivializing, I'm not saying it's not useful. It can be very useful. But it teaches you what's being done already now, okay? Now, if you're in a fast-moving industry, what usually happens is that every so often, every few years, the way you're doing business now, the way you're trying to sell, for example, and deliver your marketing message or deliver your sales pitch, whatever, that no longer works, okay? Because people have changed, customers have changed, the industry's changed, it's moved on to something else, right? So everything you know about how you do this, it's now out of date, okay? So you have to move with the industry. You have to think of, how are we going to keep pace with this? We've got to come up with something new. And that's generally or traditionally where education could help you, because education, the idea is that, you're learning to solve the problem. You're learning the theory behind it. You're learning the principles at play. And then, hopefully you've learned how to think, and you can come up with some kind of innovative solution that is something new, that breaks new ground. It's never been done that way before at your company, but you've figured out how to do it. This comes right down to an individual in their individual job, being able to come up with something new, right? So some industries, they're very mature. They don't really give a crap about education. It's not valued. It's not sought after. People get promoted to very high levels and, they don't have any education. On the other hand, you have other industries where education is everything. It doesn't matter what you've done. Doesn't matter. Like some areas of IT have traditionally been like that. Doesn't matter that you've been doing this for 20 years. What we're doing now didn't exist a year ago. So all that knowledge that you have of this ancient, language or, configuring systems architectures or whatever, that doesn't apply anymore. It doesn't matter that you have that. We have to all learn new skills. And maybe you're older, maybe you have a huge knowledge base. It might be harder for you to adapt. So having education that teaches you like the new stuff, that can help. obviously there's exceptions to this. Obviously, I'm speaking very generally here, but that's the basic principle. So that can help you determine perhaps what you need if your goal is to be in a certain position, a certain industry. Joni AV says, do you have any tips for how to start something like an Etsy shop as a side hustle? Well, I don't know much about Etsy. I've never had any involvement with that myself. But if you're talking like generally like a store online, it's all about the marketing side of it. Okay, I'm assuming that, you know, it's almost like I assume it's starting like it's similar to starting like an Amazon store or any other sort of platform. It's all about marketing. Okay, so learn about marketing in general. It's not really that hard. You can do it very quickly, and then it's having like sort of very, very deep knowledge of your customers. Okay, how they think, what they perceive as a good value, what they might be looking for, what are their attitudes towards various things, you know, things like that. You have to really, really, really know your customers, and the more you do, the more successful you are. That's basically how these things work when you're doing e-business. Now, in terms of like how to set up an Etsy store, I mean, you can like that's all operations. That's pretty simple. I'm sure it's a matter of just watching a few videos or reading a few articles, and then bam, you know, you can get over those hurdles pretty quickly. And you know, anything else, I'm assuming the products work on consignment. You know, you don't need like a ton of money to get up and running. You can do it with what you have, you know, like, so that doesn't enter into it, nor any sort of regulatory or any kind of thing like that. And then if there are any sort of business licenses or administrative stuff, I would worry about that afterwards. Okay. This is something that people talk about a lot. Where is, no, that's not it. I've seen so many people like over the years that give advice for businesses, and you know, it's sort of based on this, in my opinion, rather outdated idea that you've got to write a business plan. You've got to work out all the nitty-gritty details all ahead of time before you've even started, and write it down into a master plan, and then execute that plan. In my experience and in my opinion, based on observing many, many people do that, it doesn't really work. You only learn what to do by jumping in and figuring out as you go along. So what I'm gearing up to say here is simply that if there are any administrative stuff you need, if you're selling things that you need to register as a business, or like all that stuff, taxes and all, don't worry about that until you're a success. Okay, like you've started it, you've made a few sales. It doesn't look like that was a fluke. It looks like that's a regular thing, and you can increase your sales. Then it looks like this is a thing you're going to be doing. Then you can start worrying about that. Don't worry about that before you've even started, okay? Because if you do all that administrative stuff and then you start and then it doesn't go anywhere, all your effort's been wasted, right? It also makes it very hard to then regroup and try something else, or tweak the plan. You know, maybe you still have an Etsy store, but you're selling something else, you know, so then that maybe changes all your administrative stuff. You know, so don't worry about any of that stuff. Make sales first. Just go for it. And that's the only problem you have to solve. That's the hardest problem you're ever going to need to solve. Once you've cracked that, everything else is easy. So that's all I can say about that, really. Hopefully that was somewhat helpful. But yeah, like an e-business is a good, you know, it's one of the standard things that people do as a side hustle because it's not that labor intensive. You know, you might have to come home and spend a couple hours on the computer, or you might have to, if you're selling products, you might have to do something more than just be on the computer, depending what your product is. If you're like mailing out stuff or however it's structured, or if you're providing services, like, you know, you're spending time with customers or something, like clients or whatever, you know, but e-business is like, obviously it's a really good thing to do as a side hustle. There's many, many things within that. So yeah. Anyway, I have to sign off in about 5 minutes or so. I want to draw everyone's attention to a couple of things. First of all, people were talking about learning marketing, learning sales and stuff. If you're serious about that, I have this thing right here, the $100 MBA. So for those of you who are interested in that kind of thing, check out the link in the description. Basically, you're learning business and you're learning it properly. You're learning it from the same source as people who take an actual master's degree in business, a master's of business administration from a brick and mortar university. You're learning the same material. The only difference is that this is completely self-study. You do it on your own terms. You can go as deep as you want, or you could skip entire subjects if that's what you want. You're not interested in learning everything, just specific areas. That's why I created this course, basically with entrepreneurs in mind. There's other people that can benefit from it too if you're thinking of taking an MBA, but not really sure if this is right for you before you drop, 5 figures on it and take a couple of years off work. This can be a preview. You can see what you're getting into. But it's a solution for people that they want the knowledge. They want the knowledge right from the source, not all this pseudoscience that people pass off as business, but you want the actual thing, and you want it for cheap, and you want it totally on your own terms. If that's you, check out that course. That's a resource I created for it. Yeah. Next week, I'm going to have an entire episode on ChatGPT. So if you're interested in that, I'm going to get it so that I can use ChatGPT on the live stream. I can show everybody what it is, maybe some of the things it can do, and how it's most likely going to have an impact, and what it means for people who want to use it to make money. We can get into that. I'd like to do an entire episode on it and just focus on that. So if that's of any interest to you, that'll happen 1 week from today, same time. Join me then. And thank you to everybody who asked a question and showed up. There's 19 of you guys here. You're all awesome. And if there's any sort of areas you'd like me to cover on this show that have to do with business, making money, entrepreneurship, either in innovative startups or in traditional small businesses, let me know, because I'm here to help people with whatever problems they're trying to solve and whatever they're trying to learn. So there you go. Thank you very much. You guys are all awesome. I will see you next week at the same time. Take care.